सो हे आमचें सिंपल मॉडेल आसा जे यूज करून मार्स उलटो कित्याक भोंवता रेट्रोगेड हें आमी पळोवया. इट्स व्हेरी सिंपल. आतां 2 लायन आसा. हें कितें ऑर्बिट आनी भायर आसा ती कोणाची ओके. सो हो आमचो अर्थ आनी हें आमचो मार्स मंगळ. सो मार्साचो कलर कितें आसता रेड. ओके. सो आतां आमी स्लोली अर्थ फुडें व्हरया एन्ड तूं मार्स फुडें व्हर. पळय स्लोली मार्स फुडें वता अर्थ फुडें वता ऑर्बिटान. ओके. सो अशें हांगा पावलें. आतां स्टॉप कर. हे मोमेंटाचेर तुमकां कितें दिसता मार्स कसो मूव जाता असो दिसतलो अर्था वयल्यान फुडें फुडें वता असो दिसतलो. ओके. सो अशें फुडें वचून एका पॉयंटार कितें जातलें पळय ऋषभ हांगा दवर. सो हे पॉयंटार कितें जातलें दे आर क्लोजर टू इच अदर. ओके. दे आर क्लोज टू इच अदर. सो ह्या वेळार कितें जातलें हांगा अशें दिसतलें की मार्स स्टॉप जाता म्हणून तो फुडें मूव जाता स्टॉप जाता. आनी आतां कितें जातली अर्थ फुडें वतली ना अर्थ कशी वतली ऑर्बिटार येतली. सो अर्थ जेन्ना भितर येतली ओके तेन्ना कितें जातलें मार्स कसो दिसतलो कसो दिसतलो फाटल्यान फुडें येता असो दिसतलो कित्याक बिकॉज द अर्थ हॅज ओवरटेकन अर्थान मार्साक ओवरटेक केलां. सो जेन्ना तुमी बसीन फुडें वतात जेन्ना धाकटी सायकल बी तुमकां कितें दिसता फाटी येता तें दिसता तें एक्चुअली दीस इज वॉट यू आर सेयिंग. ओके. आनी जेन्ना वो मार्स एक्चुअली फुडें वता काय फाटी वता फुडें वता फाटी वचना आमकां दिसता. सो थोडे वेळ तो फाटी असो दिसतलो आनी जशी जशी अर्थ फुडें वता तेन्ना एका वेळार तो स्टॉप जातलो आनी परत खंय वतलो फुडें वतलो. ओके. सो परत एकदां करया. सो जेन्ना आमी अशें फुडें वतात तेन्ना आमकां मार्स खंय दिसतलो अर्था वयल्यान फुडें वता तसो. जेन्ना हांगा पावलो तेन्ना स्टॉप जातलो आनी अर्थ कितें करतली अशी येतली तेन्ना मार्स खंय उरतलो फाटी. सो इट गोज बॅकवर्ड्स आनी थोड्या वेळान मागीर तो फॉरवर्ड येतलो. सो हे खातीर आमकां दिसता रेट्रोगेड मोशन ऑफ मार्स. कळ्ळें तुमकां ताका कितें म्हणटात बॅकवर्ड मोशन. अशें जुपिटर सॅटर्नूय दाखयतात पण व्हेरी मायनर. चड मोशन कोणाचें दिसता आमकां मार्साचें. सो कळ्ळें तुमकां रेट्रोगेड मोशन ऑफ मार्स. अशी आसा मार्साची उल्टी मुवमेंट. आतां आमी जे सगळें आज पळयलां केप्लराची स्टोरी आनी आमचे जे स्टार टेल्स हो भाग आसा एस्ट्रॉनॉमीची स्टोरी तातूंत आमी केप्लराचे लायफ हाजी बायोग्राफी एक ल्हानसो व्हिडिओ पळोवया.
The 16th century astronomer Nicholas Copernicus ushered in a fundamentally new view of our solar system. It was a scientific revolution. But it was not until half a century later that the German mathematician Johannes Kepler, using observational data provided by the Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe, succeeded in drawing an exact picture of the solar system. The Ptolemaic system determined the world view of the Catholic Church. But could God's creation not be explained rather more simply? This question occupied the Polish scholar Nicholas Copernicus in the early 16th century. After years of calculations, he came to the conclusion that all the planets moved at uniform speeds in orbits around not the Earth, but the Sun, which he thought was at the center of all things. But he had no way of proving this. Even so, Copernicus had his supporters. One of them, a teacher at the Protestant University of Tübingen, was the astronomer Michael Messlin. He had a student named Johannes Kepler. Johannes Kepler was born on the 27th of December 1571 in Weil, a small town in southern Germany. Although his parents were poor, he was able to attend school. The Protestant state of Württemberg provided all of its children with 3 years of free education. It was soon realized that young Johannes was a bright boy, and he was sent off to Tübingen University with excellent school grades. There, Michael Messlin fired his interest in mathematics, astronomy, and the Copernican system. It was also Messlin who persuaded the 23-year-old Kepler to go to the Protestant Austrian city of Graz, where they needed not only a good mathematician, but a Protestant mathematician. In 1596, he published his Mysterium Cosmographicum, The Secret of the Universe, in which he defended the Copernican system, but still he had no proof. One man who thought he did have proof was the Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe, not of the Copernican system, but of the Tushonic system, named after him. This still had the Earth in the center, but he thought it was orbited only by the Sun and the Moon. All the other planets, in the spirit of Copernicus, went round the Sun. Brahe found that his model would precisely explain the planetary movements as seen from the Earth, except for that of Mars, which still showed irregularities. He became court astronomer to the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II in Prague. Some 30 kilometers from the city, in Benátky Castle, Brahe set up a new observatory, with the best instruments money could buy. What he lacked was a capable assistant who could derive the definitive proof of the Tushonic system from his extensive database. Kepler applied for the post and got it. He had already had to leave Graz after the city was reoccupied by Austrian Catholics. Any Protestants had either to return to the old faith or clear out. In the summer of 1600, Kepler arrived in Benátky Castle and took up his employment with Brahe. Relations between the two men were tense from the outset. Brahe regarded Kepler as a mere assistant, someone to whom he could delegate mathematical tasks. A human computer, in other words. Then, just a year after his arrival, things suddenly changed with the unexpected death of Tycho Brahe. Now, as Brahe's successor at the court of Emperor Rudolf II, he found himself in possession of papers which would finally ditch any view of the universe, including the Tushonic, which placed the Earth at the center. Kepler looked particularly hard at Mars, whose orbit Brahe had measured. He sought to understand the planet's path in Copernican terms. After 4 years of hard work, he realized this wasn't possible. There was only one conclusion. Something in Copernicus's theory was wrong. As a result, Kepler came to formulate his first law, which dispensed with a 2,000-year-old tradition. The planetary orbits were not circles, but ellipses, with the Sun at one focus. Kepler also slaughtered another sacred cow, namely the idea that the planets moved at constant speeds. In reality, they moved faster when nearer the Sun than when further away. In his second law, he showed, again using Brahe's data, that an imaginary line between a planet and the Sun sweeps out equal areas in equal times. Kepler published both laws in his work Astronomia Nova, or New Astronomy, in which he developed a concept of planetary movement that had nothing to do with the ideas of the Church. Planets, he thought, were no longer moved by angels, but by a force emanating from the Sun. But what this force was, he couldn't say. A year later, Kepler published his Harmonices Mundi, or Harmony of the World, whose title summarizes its content. He detected a harmony in the universe. In it, he added a third law to his other two. This third law was perhaps the most remarkable. It describes a characteristic constant which can be calculated from the orbital period of a planet and the semi-major axis of its elliptical orbit. Kepler's third law is valid for all heavenly bodies orbiting a common central body. The Moon shares the same constant, for example, with artificial satellites in Earth orbit. The same is true, with a different constant, of all the planets, asteroids and comets orbiting the Sun. Kepler's third law forms the basis of the law of gravity, that Newton published in 1687 in his monumental work, the Principia Mathematica. In it, Newton describes a universal force of attraction which is a property of any body possessing mass. This force explains the movements of the stars, the planets and their moons. Newton was a legend in his lifetime and received a knighthood for his scientific achievement. Kepler, by contrast, was denied fame and social success. Worse still, as a Protestant, he was forced to leave what was now Catholic Prague. But where could he go? The 30 Years' War was raging throughout Central Europe. He went to Regensburg in the hope of calling in some old debts of his own. There he fell ill and died on the 15th of November 1630. He was buried in the Protestant cemetery outside the city. 3 years later, the site was laid waste in the confusion of the war. Kepler's work made the Copernican worldview unassailable. Working entirely alone, he succeeded in using Tycho Brahe's observational data to correctly interpret the movements of the planets. His achievement went unrecognized in his lifetime, but our modern view of the universe is still based on his insights.
मिस्ट्री ऑफ द युनिवर्स, ही मिस्ट्री कोणाची? देवाची. अशें ताणें म्हणली. ऑलवेज लिंक्ड एस्ट्रोनॉमी टू फिलॉसॉफी. ओके, सो खूब फिलॉसॉफिकल मनीस आशिल्लो आनी ह्या अभ्यासांतल्यान ताणें खूब पुस्तकां बरयलीं आपल्या लायफान. एक अर्दी लायब्ररीच ताणें तयार केली, इतलीं पुस्तकां, आनी ती खूब व्हॅल्युएबल आसात कित्याक तातूंतलें नॉलेज आमी आज सुद्दां आमच्या टेक्स्ट बुकांनी यूज करतात. सांग प्राजक्ता.
सर त्यांनी कसली कसली बुकां बरयली?
ओके, आता सगळी लायब्ररी उगडपाक म्हाका आतां वेळ ना. आता टायम आमचो जाल्लो आसा. फुडल्या एपिसोडांनी बी तुमी म्हज्या बरोबर रावात आनी कॅप्लरान कितें कितें बुकां बरयल्लीं, तातूंतल्यान कसले कसले थियरीज आनी कसले कसले रिसर्च ताणें संवसारा फुडें दिले हें आमी फुडल्या एपिसोडान पळोवया. आज आमचो टायम जायत आयिल्लो आसा. अशीच आमची ही जर्नी युनिवर्साची फुडें फुडें वचत रावतली. तुमी आमच्या बरोबर येवपाचेच. ताका टिकेट काय लागना. फ्री ट्रिपार आमी सगळे युनिवर्साचे तुमकां व्हरून हाडटात. पूण एक मात काम तुमकां करचें पडटलें. फीडबॅक धाडचो पडटलो आनी हो आमचो ईमेल आयडी आसा. सगळो तुमचो फीडबॅक आमच्या ईमेल आयडीर धाडत रावात. प्रोग्राम कसो आसा, ताजे इम्प्रुवमेंट कितें करूं शकतात, ताजे कितें तुमकां पॉयंट्स आवडटात किंवा कितें तुमकां दाखोवपाक जाय हे प्रोग्रामान आमी, ते सगळे तुमी म्हाका फीडबॅक धाडत रावात. पळयत रावात अंतरिक्ष, अप अप एंड अवे. पळयत रावात
प्रुडंट मीडिया.